mundane, the service attitude of the devotee gradually increases and never becomes slackened. Generally, in old age, a person is allowed retirement from mundane service, but in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement at all. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. In the transcendental service, there is no satiation, and therefore there is no retirement. Materially, when a man becomes tired by rendering service in his physical body, he is allowed retirement. But in the transcendental service, there is no feeling of fatigue because it is spiritual service and it is not on the bodily plane. Service on the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows older, but the spirit is never old, and therefore on the spiritual plane the service is never tiresome. Uddhava undoubtedly became old, but that does not mean that his spirit became old. His service attitude matured on the transcendental plane, and therefore as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, he at once remembered his Lord by reference to the context of and forgot himself on the physical plane. That is a sign of pure devotional service to the Lord, as will be explained later on Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasya, etc., in Lord Kapila's instructions to his mother, Devahuti. 4. For a moment he remained dead silent, and his body did not move. He became absorbed in the nectar of remembering the Lord's lotus feet in devotional ecstasy, and he appeared to be going increasingly deeper into that ecstasy. Purport. On the inquiry by Vidura about Krishna, Uddhava appeared to be awakened from slumber. He appeared to regret that he had forgotten the lotus feet of the Lord. Thus he again remembered the lotus feet of the Lord and remembered all his transcendental loving service unto him. And by so doing he felt the same ecstasy that he used to feel in the presence of the Lord. Because the Lord is absolute, there is no difference between his remembrance and his personal presence. Thus Uddhava remained completely silent for a moment, and then he appeared to be going deeper and deeper into ecstasy. Feelings of ecstasy are displayed by highly advanced devotees of the Lord. There are 8 kinds of transcendental changes in the body: tears, shivering of the body, perspiration, restlessness, throbbing, choking of the throat, etc. And all were manifested by Uddhava in the presence of Vidura. It was so observed by Vidura that Uddhava had all the transcendental bodily changes due to total ecstasy, and he was trying to wipe away tears of separation from his eyes. Thus Vidura could understand that Uddhava had completely assimilated extensive love for the Lord. Purport. The symptoms of the highest order of devotional life were observed by Vidura, an experienced devotee of the Lord, and he confirmed Uddhava's perfectional stage of love of Godhead. Ecstatic bodily changes are manifested from the spiritual plane and are not artificial expressions developed by practice. There are 3 different stages of development in devotional service. The first stage is that of following the regular principles prescribed in the codes of devotional service. The second stage is that of assimilation and realization of the steady condition of devotional service. And the last stage is that of ecstasy symptomized by transcendental bodily expression. The 9 different modes of devotional service, such as hearing, chanting, and remembering, are the beginning of the process. By regular hearing of the glories and pastimes of the Lord, the impurities in the student's heart begin to be washed off. The more one is cleansed of impurities, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. Gradually, the activities take the forms of steadiness, firm faith, taste, realization, and assimilation, one after another. These different stages of gradual development increase love of God to the highest stage. And in the highest stage, there are still more symptoms, such as affection, anger, and attachment, gradually rising in exceptional cases to the Mahabhava stage, which is generally not possible for the living entities. All these were manifested by Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the personification of love of God. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, the chief disciple of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, these transcendental symptoms displayed by pure devotees like Uddhava are systematically described. We have written a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu entitled The Nectar of Devotion, and one may consult this book for more detailed information on the science of devotional service. Text 6. The great devotee Uddhava soon came back from the abode of the Lord to the human plane, and wiping his eyes, he awakened his reminiscence of the past and spoke to Vidura in a pleasing mood. Purport. When Uddhava was fully absorbed in the transcendental ecstasy of love of God, he actually forgot all about the external world. The pure devotee lives constantly in the abode of the Supreme Lord, even in the present body, which apparently belongs to this world. The pure devotee is not exactly on the bodily plane, since he is absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme. When Uddhava wanted to speak to Vidura, he came down from the abode of the Lord, Dwarka, to the material plane of human beings. Even though a pure devotee is present on this mortal planet, he is here in relation to the Lord for engagement in transcendental loving service and not for any material cause. A living entity can live either on the material plane or in the transcendental abode of the Lord in accordance with his existential condition. The conditioned changes of the living entity are explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the instructions given to Srila Rupa Goswami by Lord Sri Caitanya. Quote, the living entities all over the universes are enjoying the effects of the respective fruit of results of their own work, life after life. Out of all of them, some may be influenced by the association of pure devotees, and thus get the chance to execute devotional service by attainment of taste. This taste is the seed of devotional service, and one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed is advised to sow it in the core of his heart. As one cultivates a seed by pouring water to fructify it, the seed of devotional service sown in the heart of the devotee may be cultured by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord. The creeper of devotional service so nourished gradually grows, and the devotee, acting as a gardener, goes on pouring the water of constant hearing and chanting. The creeper of devotional service gradually grows so high that it passes through the entire material universe and enters into the spiritual sky, growing still higher and higher until it reaches the planet Goloka Vrindavan. The devotee gardener is in touch with the abode of the Lord, even from the material plane, by dint of performing devotional service to the Lord simply by hearing and chanting. As a creeper takes shelter of another stronger tree, similarly the creeper of devotional service, nourished by the devotee, takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord and thus becomes fixed. When the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence, and the gardener who nourished it is able to enjoy this fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. Unquote. That Uddhava attained this stage is evident from his dealings. He could simultaneously reach the supreme planet and still appear in this world. Text 7. Sri Uddhava said, my dear Vidura, the sun of the world, Lord Krishna has set, and our house has now been swallowed by the great snake of time. What can I say to you about our welfare? Purport. The disappearance of the Krishna sun may be explained as follows, according to the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vidura was struck with great sorrow when he got the hint of the annihilation of the great Yadu dynasty, as well as his own family, the Kuru dynasty. Uddhava could understand the grief of Vidura, and therefore he first of all wanted to sympathize with him by saying that after the sunset, everyone is in darkness. Since the entire world was merged in the darkness of grief, neither Vidura nor Uddhava nor anyone else could be happy. Uddhava was as much aggrieved as Vidura, and there was nothing further to be said about their welfare. The comparison of Krishna to the sun is very appropriate. As soon as the sun sets, darkness automatically appears. But the darkness experienced by the common man does not affect the sun itself, either at the time of sunrise or of sunset. Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance are exactly like that of the sun. He appears and disappears in innumerable universes, and as long as he is present in a particular universe, there is all transcendental light in that universe. But the universe from which he passes away is put into darkness. His pastimes, however, are everlasting. The Lord is always present in some universe, just as the sun is present in either the eastern or the western hemisphere. The sun is always present either in India or in America. But when the sun is present in India, the American land is in darkness. And when the sun is present in America, the Indian hemisphere is in darkness. As the sun appears in the morning and gradually rises to the meridian, and then again sets in one hemisphere while simultaneously rising in the other, so Lord Krishna's disappearance in one universe and the beginning of his different pastimes in another take place simultaneously. As soon as one pastime is finished here, it is manifested in another universe. And thus his Nitya Lila, or eternal pastimes, are going on without ending. As the sunrise takes place once in 24 hours, similarly the pastimes of Lord Krishna take place in a universe once in a daytime of Brahma, the account of which is given in the Bhagavad Gita as 4,300,000,000 solar years. But wherever the Lord is present, all his different pastimes are described in the But wherever the Lord is present, all his different pastimes, as described in the revealed scriptures, take place at regular intervals. As at sunset, the snakes become powerful, thieves are encouraged, ghosts become active, the lotus becomes disfigured, and the Chakravaki laments. So, with the disappearance of Lord Krishna, the atheists feel enlivened and the devotees become sorry. Are those the ready-made words for lyrics to a song? Could we hear part of it?
Starting from where from as the sunset, or would you as at sunset the snakes become wild. If are encouraged, ghosts become active, the lotus become disfigured, Chakravati laments. So with the disappearance of Lord Krishna, the atheists feel enlivened, the bodies become so.
It's poignant. It's poignant. This universe with all its planets is most unfortunate, and even more unfortunate are the members of the Yadu dynasty, because they could not identify Lord Hari as the personality of Godhead any more than the fish could identify the moon. Uddhava lamented for the unfortunate persons of the world who could not recognize Lord Sri Krishna in spite of seeing all his transcendental godly qualities. From the very beginning of his appearance within the prison bars of King Kamsa up to his Mausa Lalila, although he exhibited his potencies as the personality of Godhead, in the 6 opulences of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. The foolish persons of the world could not understand that he was the Supreme Lord. Foolish persons might have thought him an extraordinary historic figure because they had no intimate touch with the Lord, but more unfortunate were the family members of the Lord, the members of the Yadu dynasty, who were always in company with the Lord but were unable to recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uddhava lamented his own fortune also because although he knew Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could not properly use the opportunity to render devotional service to the Lord. He regretted everyone's misfortune, including his own. The pure devotee of the Lord thinks himself most unfortunate. That is due to excessive love for the Lord, and it is one of the transcendental perceptions of viraha, the suffering of separation. It is learned from the revealed scriptures that the moon was born from the milk ocean. There is a milk ocean in the upper planets, and there Lord Vishnu, who controls the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the Supersoul, resides as the Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Those who do not believe in the existence of the ocean of milk, because they have experience only of the salty water in the ocean, should know that the world is also called Go, which means the cow. The urine of a cow is salty, and according to Ayurvedic medicine, the cow's urine is very effective in treating patients suffering from liver trouble. Such patients may not have any experience of the cow's milk because milk is never given to liver patients. But the liver patient may know that the cow has milk also, although he has never tasted it. Similarly, men who have experience only of this tiny planet where the saltwater ocean exists may take information from the revealed scriptures that there is also an ocean of milk, although we have never seen it. From this ocean of milk, the moon was born, but the fish in the milk ocean could not recognize that the moon was not another fish and was different from them. The fish took the moon to be one of them and maybe something illuminating, but nothing more. The unfortunate persons who do not recognize Lord Krishna are like such fish. They take him to be one of them, although a little extraordinary in opulent strength, etc. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 confirms such foolish persons to be most unfortunate. Avajananti ma mudha manushim tanum ashritam. 9. The Yadus were all experienced devotees, learned and expert in psychic study. Over and above this, they were always with the Lord in all kinds of relaxations, and still they were only able to know him as the one Supreme who dwells everywhere. Purport: in the Vedas it is said that the Supreme Lord of the Paramatma cannot be understood simply by the strength of one's erudition or power of mental speculation. Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahona shutena, from the Katha Upanishad. He can be known only by one who has the mercy of the Lord. The Yadavas were all exceptionally learned and experienced, but in spite of their knowing the Lord as the one who lives in everyone's heart, they could not understand that he is the original personality of Godhead. This lack of knowledge was not due to their insufficient erudition. It was due to their misfortune. In Vrindavan, however, the Lord was not even known as the Paramatma because the residents of Vrindavan were pure, unconventional devotees of the Lord and could think of him only as their object of love. They did not know that he is the personality of Godhead. The Yadus, or residents of Dwarka, however, could know Lord Krishna as Vasudeva, or the Supersoul living everywhere, not as the Supreme Lord. As scholars of the Vedas, they verified the Vedic hymns Eko Deva Sarva Bhuta Dvisha Antaryami and Vrishninam Paradevata. The Yadus therefore accepted Lord Krishna as the Supersoul incarnated in their family and not more than that. 10. Under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to all the evidences of the Vedas. He is accepted by all acharyas, including Sripad Shankaracharya. But when he was present in the world, different classes of men accepted him differently, and therefore their calculations of the Lord were also different. Generally, persons who had faith in the revealed scriptures accepted the Lord as he is, and all of them merged into great bereavement when the Lord disappeared from the world. In the first canto, we have already discussed the lamentation of Arjuna and Yudhishthira, to whom the disappearance of Lord Krishna was almost intolerable up to the end of their lives. The Yadavas were only partially cognizant of the Lord, but they are also glorious because they had the opportunity to associate with the Lord, who acted as the head of their family, and they also rendered the Lord intimate service. The Yadavas and other devotees of the Lord are different from those who wrongly calculated him to be an ordinary human personality. Such persons are certainly bewildered by the illusory energy. They are hellish and are envious of the Supreme Lord. The illusory energy acts very powerful on them because in spite of their elevated mundane education, such persons are faithless and are infected by the mentality of atheism. They are always very eager to establish that Lord Krishna was an ordinary man who was killed by a hunter due to his many impious acts in plotting to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and Jarasandha, the demoniac kings of the earth. Such persons have no faith in the statement of the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is unaffected by the reactions of work. Namam karmani limpanti. According to the atheistic point of view, Lord Krishna's family, the Yadu dynasty, was vanquished due to being cursed by the Brahmanas for the sins committed by Krishna in killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, etc. All these blasphemies do not touch the heart of the devotees of the Lord because they know perfectly well what is what. Their intelligence regarding the Lord is never disturbed, but those who are disturbed by the statements of the asuras are also condemned. That is what Uddhava meant in this verse. 11. Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who are unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penances. Purport. In this verse, the word avitripta drisham is most significant. The conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. The example of the fish on land is very appropriate. If one takes a fish from the water and puts it on the land, it cannot be made happy by any amount of offered pleasure. The spirit soul can be happy only in the association of the Supreme Living Being, the Personality of Godhead, and nowhere else. The Lord, by his unlimited causeless mercy, has innumerable Vaikuntha planets in the Brahmajyoti sphere of the spiritual world. And in that transcendental world, there is an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. The Lord himself comes to display his transcendental pastimes, typically represented at Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. He appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead, back to home, to the eternal world. But for want of sufficient piety, the onlookers are not attracted by such pastimes of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. By strict adherence to the prescribed principles for all orders of social life, one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc., and can be elevated to the plane of rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. Only by such a transcendental vision are one's material hankerings fully satisfied. When the Lord was present, persons who were able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him in true perspective were thus able to go back with him to his kingdom. But those persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is remained attached to material hankerings and were not able to go back to Godhead, back to home. When the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form, as stated in this verse. The Lord left in his own body. He did not leave his body, as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. This statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul. The Lord appeared in order to release the world from the undue burden of the non-believing asuras, and after doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yogamaya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes were wonderful for everyone, even for those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in his form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. Thus his, Sri Krishna's, transcendental body is the ornament of all ornaments. Bhushana, Bhushanangam. In conformity with the Vedic hymns, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanash Chaitananam, the personality of Godhead is more excellent than all other living beings within the universe is in the material world. He is the chief of all living entities. No one can surpass him or be equal to him in wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, or renunciation. When Lord Krishna was within this universe, he seemed to be a human being because he appeared in a manner just suitable for his pastimes in the mortal world. He did not appear in human society in his Vaikuntha feature with 4 hands because that would not have been suitable for his pastimes. But in spite of his appearing as a human being, no one was or is equal to him in any respect, in any of the 6 different opulences. Everyone is more or less proud of his opulence in this world. But when Lord Krishna was in human society, he excelled all his contemporaries within the universe. When the Lord's pastimes are visible to the human eye, they are called prakat. And when they are not visible, they are called aprakat. In fact, the Lord's pastimes never stop, just as the sun never leaves the sky. The sun is always in its right orbit in the sky, but it is sometimes visible and sometimes invisible to our limited vision. Similarly, the pastimes of the Lord are always current in one universe or another. And when Lord Krishna disappeared from the transcendental abode of Dwarka, it was simply a disappearance from the eyes of the people there. It should not be misunderstood that his transcendental body, which is just suitable for the pastimes in the mortal world, is in any way inferior to his different expansions in the Vaikuntha lokas. His body manifested in the material world is transcendental par excellence, in the sense that his pastimes in the mortal world excel his mercy displayed in the Vaikuntha lokas. In the Vaikuntha lokas, the Lord is merciful toward the liberated or nitya mukta living entities. But in his pastimes in the mortal world, he is merciful even to the fallen souls who are nitya baddha, or conditioned forever. The 6 excellent opulences which he displayed in the mortal world by the agency of his internal potency, Yogamaya, are rare even in the Vaikuntha lokas. All his pastimes were manifested not by the material energy, but by his spiritual energy. The excellence of his Rasa Lila at Vrindavan and his householder life with 16,000 wives is wonderful, even for Narayan and Vaikuntha, and is certainly so for other living entities within this mortal world. His pastimes are wonderful even for other incarnations of the Lord, such as Sri Ram, Nrsimha, and Varaha. His opulence was so super excellent that his pastimes were adored even by the Lord of Vaikuntha, who is not different from Lord Krishna himself. All the demigods from the upper, lower, and middle universal planetary systems assembled at the altar of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira. After seeing the beautiful bodily features of Lord Krishna, they all contemplated that he was the ultimate dexterous creation of Brahma, the creator of human beings. There was nothing comparable to the bodily features of Lord Krishna when he was present in this world. The most beautiful object in the material world may be compared to the blue lotus flower or the full moon in the sky. But even the lotus flower and the moon were defeated by the beauty of the bodily features of Lord Krishna, and this was certified by the demigods, the most beautiful living creatures in the universe. The demigods thought that Lord Krishna, like themselves, was also created by Lord Brahma. But in fact, Brahma was created by Lord Krishna. It was not within the power of Brahma to create the transcendental beauty of the Supreme Lord. No one is the creator of Krishna. Rather, he is the creator of everyone. As he says in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Ahang sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. Text 14. The damsels of Vraja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. In his boyhood at Vrindavan, Lord Krishna was notorious as a teasing friend in transcendental love to all the girls his age. His love for them was so intense that there is no comparison to that ecstasy, and the damsels of Vraja were so much attached to him that their affection excelled that of the great demigods like Lord Brahma and Shiva. Lord Krishna finally admitted his defeat before the transcendental affection of the gopis and declared that he was unable to repay them for their unalloyed affection. Although the gopis were seemingly anguished by the Lord's teasing behavior, when Krishna would leave them, they could not tolerate the separation and used to follow him with their eyes and minds. They were so stunned by the situation that they could not finish their household duties. No one could excel him even in the dealing of love exchanged between boys and girls. It is said in the revealed scriptures that Lord Krishna personally never goes beyond the boundary of Vrindavan. He remains there eternally because of the transcendental love of the inhabitants. Thus, even though he is not visible at present, he is not away from Vrindavan for a moment. And now we'll take a few reflections or questions. Havi Prabhu.
I find it astonishing that Yadus. I find it astonishing that we're reading the fact about Krishna's identity. Not even the Yadus knew him. Those around him mistake him for just one more creation of Brahma, and we who just few years trying to understand Krishna, somehow or other we've been displayed this reality. So I find that astonishing.
I agree. It's astonishing. Yes.
I had a question. A sentence we read today was, in Bhagavad Gita it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. I guess in Prabhupada's mission of preaching to the Western world, we're often preaching to those who have completely immersed themselves in a sinful life. And yet we try to engage them in service, or sometimes they take up to service and become great devotees. So how do you understand this? Because in a way they're completely immersed in sinful life. They're not completely free from it, like the sentence says.
There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, if you can... No, not that. It's 13th chapter, 26th verse, in which Krishna talks about how some people are just open to hearing from authority. You have it? Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita 13:26. Anye tvevam ajananta shutvan yepi upasate tepi chatitirantiva mrityum shuti prayana. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death.
Why don't you read the purport?
Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society, because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Caitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially according to Lord Caitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare. Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Caitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home.
Yes?
I was thinking on a similar point of, it was describing previously in the reading how Vidura still had sin and therefore he couldn't go directly to Krishna, but he met with Uddhava, and in meeting with Uddhava he discussed topics about Krishna, and in that way is following this process of hearing and getting purified. And Srila Prabhupada describes in the Bhagavatam how by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, one can come to meet Krishna face to face as a man meets another man. So just that process of hearing. And it reminds me of another verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Premisadhikapanai Shavanadi Shuddhatate Karye Udai, that the pure love in our heart is manifest by this process of hearing and chanting.
Yeah. Well, someone may be infested with sinful habits, but they can still be a good soul if they have some sense of appreciating devotees and hearing from authority. Apichet sudaracharo bhajade mamanandibak sadureva samantabhya samyag vyavasito hisa Shri Prambhavati Dharmatma Shashvash Chantin Nagashiti Konteya Pratijanihi Nami Bhaktya Pranashiti. There's a way in which Krishna describes someone may be Sudarachara, which is horrible, horrible behavior. But if they have a sense of appreciation, or they're properly situated because they have some sense that I like devotees, on that level, then as Prabhupada mentions in the 20 items of knowledge in 13th chapter 8 through 12, Amanit Vama Damvit Vama Himsa Shantar Arja Vama, etc., he says that one of them is a sense of devotion to Krishna. And you can be missing all 19 of them. Also, considering that verse, Yesham Dhantakatam Papam, there is a distinction made by Bhaktivinoda Thakur between ordinary punya, which is described there, and bhakti and mukhi sukriti, because one comes from contact with devotional service by association of devotees. There's examples in the Bhagavatam. For instance, the Avanti Brahmana was engaged in materialistic activities 10%. But he did do a sacrifice once for somebody who asked him for some charity to print some Bhagavad Gitas and to build them a temple. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur mentions this, and it's in the purport, in the BBT edition. And after he had lost all his material assets, the only thing that was left was that bhakti and mukhi sukriti, because he had done something transcendental. He had helped print the Bhagavad Gita. And that's what set him off on his path. Itam astaya paratmanishtam yasitam purpatamar rashi hamtu shami durantaparam tamu mukundam shevayava, the verse of determination of the person who wants to go back to Godhead. Also, Nriga was a Pukka Karmakandi. But, actually it was Nriga who did the printing of the books. The Avanti Brahman had done a yajna once for Karmakanda reasons, but he had felt a twinge of devotion in his heart when he mentioned the name of the Supreme Lord during the yajna. And when he lost everything, that all he had left was that element of determination to serve the Lord because of that one incidence of connection to the Lord. Any other points, Madhava?
There's one from Sri Antariksha Prabhu.
Sri Antariksha.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear Guru Maharaj, my respectful obeisances unto you. Reflection. Krishna is more merciful in the material world.
He's more merciful in the material world. Yes. In that verse by Karabhajana Muni says, Maya Mrigam Tayita Ipsitaman Vadava, that Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu in Kali Yuga, he runs after the conditioned souls to convince them to take the devotional service.
Just firstly, really appreciating these past two chapters, Prabhupada's purports in these past two chapters. Just how poetic they've been and how deep and systematically presented in a very, I've just been really appreciating how beautifully he's putting so many different processes of devotional service and descriptions. And I highlighted a part in the purport of 2.6, and Prabhupada's mentioning here about the growth of the creeper of devotional service. And Prabhupada mentions, as the creeper takes shelter of another, stronger tree, similarly the creeper of devotional service, nourished by the devotee, takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord and thus becomes fixed. When the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence, and the gardener who nourished it is able to enjoy this fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. I was wondering if you could maybe help me understand or elaborate on what sadhu sangha culminates in as someone progresses in devotional service.
Well, Adao Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangata Bhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivriti Set Tato Nishta Ruchis Tata. There's a way in which Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, in the beginning there's Shraddha, Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Suridan Nishchay Krishna Bhakti Kola Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. There's this sense somebody has that devotional service is Nice. And he indicates also that this comes about by agyata sukriti. And then there's a desire to associate with devotees. And from association with devotees, then one gets engaged properly in bhajana kriya, and then from bhajana kriya comes anartha nivritti, and from that nishta, and then ruchi, and then asakti, then bhava, then prema. That's what results from it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he teaches Sanatana Goswami, he repeatedly points out that the root cause of devotional service is meeting devotees. In fact, he includes a verse from the Bhagavatam. And the verse says that when one gets ready to achieve liberation in the material world, then one meets a devotee. And the acharyas all say this is a Sanskrit device, or it's a device of grammar, which is meant to emphasize that the cause is so powerful that you mention the effect before the cause. So the verse says that when you're about to be liberated, you meet a devotee, but what it actually means is that when you meet a devotee, it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to attain. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says it's just like when you see the sunlight in the morning on the horizon, you know pretty soon you're going to see the sun. So he says if you're associating with devotees, then you can be very sure that very soon you're going to see Krishna directly because of sadhu sangha. Yes?
So, just wondering, in that sense, could it be said that one has received the mercy of the Lord if they've come in contact with the devotees?
Yes. Because that's the main way that one receives the mercy of the Lord, through the Madhyama Adhikaris who go about distributing Krishna consciousness. And regarding your question about the sinful taking devotional service, another example, prime example, is Mrigarari, who meets Narada Muni, and it's specifically mentioned that he was so impressed with Narada Muni's qualities and his countenance that his heart changed. So he was an example of somebody, you really can't, Jagai Madai, but Mrigarari was appreciating from his training from his father, half killing animals. But then when Narada came, he got Narada's association, and then Narada also gave a knowledge intervention, where he informed him that these animals are going to be waiting for you on the other side. They're going to tear you to shreds. So those couple of things got him on the path, and he shaved up, right? Sat down in a little village. Just sat and chanted Hare Kṛṣṇa. Anybody from the outside People's Party? Is everyone okay? There's in stunned silence. Okay. Last one. Madhva. Okay, yeah. There's one online.
Shri Antariksh Prabhu asked a question. What causes one person to be more determined by other?
What causes a person to be more determined than another?
I don't know, by other.
Well, one answer is going back to Yesham Tontakatam Papam, because it specifically says that. Yesham Tontakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvanva Mohanir Mukta Bhajanti Ma Dhridavrita. That's one cause of being Dhridavrita. Another one is in the verse Siddhanta Bole Chitta Nakara Alash Iha Hoite Krishna Lagrit Sudrid Manash. Sudrid, determined. Mind is determined. Manash. Means because you got proper training in Siddhanta, then Kaviraj Goswami says, then your mind will be determined. When you know, as Prabhupada said, when you know what's what. And the other one is, if you're trending towards the mode of goodness, there's a tendency Prabhupada mentions or that Krishna mentions in the Gita, where he says your determination becomes strong in the mode of goodness. So both things, those are two references. And now we'll stand up for a Gauranga stretch.
Kameshwari would like to ask a question or make a comment.
Okay. You can't ask questions after the Gauranga stretch. Go ahead.
I wanted to inquire about, I think there's this part where the demigods thought that Brahma had created Krishna when it was actually Krishna that created Brahma.
Yeah. It's an observation you're making, right?
Sort of. I just wanted to know if, why they thought that Brahma created Krishna.
Well, in context, what it really says is their opinion is, at that time of seeing Krishna, that this must be the pinnacle of his creating, of all his creations. So one of the main points there is that he's really beautiful. And as far as they knew, at that time, that was, if he was a creation of Brahma, then he was the best of any creation he had ever made. It's you could look at it either way. I mean, philosophically, that whole section deals with the Yadus and others who weren't able to fully understand and comprehend who Krishna was. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect was that he's so attractive, he's so beautiful, that when people, with the context that Brahma's created everything, said, okay, he really did it this time. That's the best he could have done. Thank you, Kameshwari. Okay, we're continuing at text number 15, and we're getting close to the cow break. So stand by. The personality of Godhead, the all-compassionate controller of both the spiritual and material creations, is unborn. But when there is friction between his peaceful devotees and persons who are in the material modes of nature, he takes birth just like fire, accompanied by the Mahatattva. The devotees of the Lord are by nature peaceful because they have no material hankering. A liberated soul has no hankering, and therefore he has no lamentation. One who wants to possess also laments when he loses his possession. Devotees have no hankerings for material possessions and no hankerings for spiritual salvation. They are situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord as a matter of duty, and they do not mind where they are or how they have to act. Karmis, Gyanis, and Yogis all hanker to possess some material or spiritual assets. Karmis want material possessions. Gyanis and Yogis want spiritual possessions. But devotees do not want any material or spiritual assets. They want only to serve the Lord anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds that the Lord desires, and the Lord is always specifically compassionate towards such devotees. The Karmis, Gyanis, and Yogis have their particular mentalities in the modes of nature, and therefore they are called Itara, or non-devotees. These Itaras, including even the Yogis, sometimes harass the devotees of the Lord. Durvasa Muni, a great yogi, harassed Maharaj Ambarish because the latter was a great devotee of the Lord. And the great Karmi and Jnani Hiranyakashipu even harassed his own Vaishnava son, Prahlad Maharaj. There are many instances of such harassment of the peaceful devotees of the Lord by the Itaras. When such friction takes place, the Lord, out of his great compassion towards his pure devotees, appears in person, accompanied by his plenary portions controlling the Mahat Tattva. The Lord is everywhere in both the material and spiritual domains, and he appears for the sake of his devotees when there is friction between his devotee and the non-devotee. As electricity is generated by friction of matter anywhere and everywhere, the Lord, being all-pervading, appears because of the friction of devotees and non-devotees. When Lord Krishna appears on a mission, all his plenary portions accompany him. When he appeared as the son of Vasudeva, there were differences of opinion about his incarnation. Some said he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some said he is an incarnation of Narayan. And others said he is the incarnation of Shri Dakshay Vishnu. But actually, he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. And Narayan, the Purushas, and all other incarnations accompany him to function as different parts of his pastimes. Mahat Angsha Yukta indicates that he is accompanied by the Purushas who create the Mahat Tattva. It is confirmed in the Vedic hymns, Mahantam Vibhum Atmanam. Lord Krishna appeared just like electricity when there was friction between Kamsa and Vasudeva and Ugrasena. Vasudeva and Ugrasena were the Lord's devotees, and Kamsa, a representative of the Karmis and Gyanis, was a non-devotee. Krishna, as he is compared to the sun. He first appeared from the ocean of the womb of Devaki, and gradually he satisfied the inhabitants of the places surrounding Mathura, just as the sun enlivens the lotus flower in the morning. After gradually rising to the meridian of Dwarka, the Lord set like the sun, placing everything in darkness, as described by Uddhava. 16. When I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva, although he is unborn, how he went away from his father's protection to Vraja and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear, all these bewildering incidents give me distress. Purport. Because Lord Sri Krishna is the original person from whom everything and everyone has emanated, aham sarvasya prabhava, janmadhyasya yataha. Nothing can be equal to or greater than him. The Lord is supremely perfect, and whenever he enacts his transcendental pastimes as a son, a rival, or an object of enmity, he plays the part so perfectly that even pure devotees like Uddhava are bewildered. For example, Uddhava knew perfectly well that Lord Sri Krishna is eternally existent and can neither die nor disappear for good, yet he lamented for Lord Krishna. All these events are perfect arrangements to give perfection to his supreme glories. It is for enjoyment's sake. When a father plays with his little son, and the father lies down on the floor as if defeated by the son, it is just to give the little son pleasure and nothing more. Because the Lord is all-powerful, it is possible for him to adjust opposites such as birth and no birth, power and defeat, fear and fearlessness. A pure devotee knows very well how it is possible for the Lord to adjust opposite things. But he laments for the non-devotees who, not knowing the supreme glories of the Lord, think of him as imaginary, simply because there are so many apparently contradictory statements in the scriptures. Factually, there is nothing contradictory. Everything is possible when we understand the Lord as the Lord and not as one of us, with all our imperfection. 17. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents for their, Krishna's and Balaram's, inability to serve their feet, due to being away from home because of great fear of Kamsa. He said, "O mother, O father, please excuse us for this inability. All this behavior of the Lord gives me pain at heart." Purport. It appears that Lord Krishna and Baladev were both greatly afraid of Kamsa, and therefore they had to hide themselves. But if Lord Krishna and Baladev are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how is it possible that they were afraid of Kamsa? Is there any contradiction in such statements? Vasudeva, due to his great appreciation for Krishna, wanted to give him protection. He never thought that Krishna was the Supreme Lord and could protect himself. He thought of Krishna as his son, because Vasudeva was a great devotee of the Lord. He did not like to think that Krishna might be killed like his other children. Morally, Vasudeva was bound to deliver Krishna to the hands of Kamsa, because he had promised to turn over all his children. But out of his great love for Krishna, he broke his promise, and the Lord was very pleased with Vasudeva for his transcendental mentality. He did not want to disturb the intense affection of Vasudeva, and thus he agreed to be carried by his father to the house of Nanda and Yashoda. And just to test the intense love of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna fell down in the waters of the Jamuna while his father was crossing the river. Vasudeva became mad after his child as he tried to recover him in the midst of the rising river. These are all glorified pastimes of the Lord, and there is no contradiction in such manifestations. Since Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he was never afraid of Kamsa, but to please his father, he agreed to be so. And the most brilliant part of his supreme character was that he begged pardon from his parents for being unable to serve their feet while absent from home because of fear of Kamsa. The Lord, whose lotus feet are worshipped by demigods like Brahma and Shiva, wanted to worship the feet of Vasudeva. Such instructions by the Lord to the world is quite appropriate. Even if one is the Supreme Lord, one must serve his parents. A son is indebted to his parents in so many ways, and it is the duty of the son to serve his parents, however great the son may be. Indirectly, Krishna wanted to teach the atheists who do not accept the supreme fatherhood of God, and they may learn from this action how much the Supreme Father has to be respected. Uddhava was simply struck with wonder by such glorious behavior of the Lord, and he was very sorry that he was unable to go with him. Who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet even once, could ever forget it? Simply by expanding the leaves of his eyebrows, Krishna has given the death blow to those who were burdening the earth. Purport. Lord Krishna cannot be accepted as one of the human beings, even though he played the role of an obedient son. His actions were so extraordinary that by the simple raising of his eyebrows, he could deliver death blows to those who were burdening the earth. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who could tolerate separation from him? Purport. Lord Krishna's causeless mercy was exhibited in the great assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was merciful even to his enemy, the king of Chedi, who always tried to be an envious rival of the Lord. Because it is not possible to be a bona fide rival of the Lord, the king of Chedi was extremely malicious toward Lord Krishna. In this, he was like many other asuras, such as Kamsa and Jarasandha. In the open assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, Shishupal insulted Lord Krishna, and he was finally killed by the Lord. But it was seen by everyone in the assembly that a light flashed out of the body of the king of Chedi and merged into the body of Lord Krishna. This means that Chedi Raj achieved the salvation of attaining oneness with the Supreme, which is a perfection most desired by the Gyanis and Yogis, and for which they execute their different types of transcendental activities. It is a fact that persons who are trying to understand the supreme truth by their personal endeavors of mental speculation or mystic powers of yoga achieve the same goal as others who are personally killed by the Lord. Both achieve the salvation of merging in the Brahmajyoti rays of the transcendental body of the Lord. The Lord was merciful even to his enemy, and the success of the king of Chedi was observed by everyone who was present in the assembly. Vidura was also present there, and therefore Uddhava referred the incident to his memory. And now we've come to the cow break. We'll be back in 10 minutes at 26 after the hour. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.